An account of events in the Constitutional Convention. An account of events in the Constitutional Convention. It was further said that in a federal government over states equally free and sovereign and independent, every state ought to have an equal share in making the federal law or regulations and deciding upon them and in carrying them into execution. Neither of which was the case in this system, but the reverse, the states not having an equal voice in the legislature nor in the appointment of the executive, the judges, and the other officers of the government. It was insisted that in the whole system there was but one federal feature, the appointment of the senators by the states in their sovereign capacity, that is, by their legislatures, and the equality of suffrage in that branch. But it was said that this feature was only federal in appearance to prove this, and that the Senate, as constituted, could not be a security for the protection and preservation of the state governments, and that the senators could not be justly considered the representatives of the states as states. It was observed that upon just principles of representation, the representative ought to speak the sentiments of his constituents and not to vote in the same manner that his constituents would do as far as he can judge, provided his constituents were acting in person and had the same knowledge and information with himself, and therefore that the representative ought to be dependent on his constituents and answerable to them, that the connection between the representative and the represented ought to be as near and as close as possible according to these principles. Mr. Speaker, in this state it is provided by its Constitution that the representatives in Congress shall be chosen annually, shall be paid by the state, and shall be subject to recall even within the year. And so cautiously has our Constitution guarded an abuse of the trust reposed in our representatives in the federal government, whereas by the 3rd and 6th sections of the first article of this new system, the senators are to be chosen for 6 years instead of being chosen annually, instead of being paid by their states who send them. They, in conjunction with the other branch, are to pay themselves out of the Treasury of the United States, and are not liable to be recalled during the period for which they are chosen, thus serve for 6 years, and the senators are rendered totally and absolutely independent of their states, of whom they ought to be the representatives, without any bond or tie between them. During that time they may join in measures ruinous and destructive to their states, even such as should totally annihilate their state governments, and their states cannot recall them nor exercise any control over them. This is January 8th, 1788. It's an excerpt. Baltimore, Maryland Gazette. Luther Martin's Genuine Information. Luther Martin's Genuine Information. Another consideration, Mr. Speaker. It was thought ought to have great weight to prove that the smaller states cannot depend on the Senate for the preservation of their rights, either against large and ambitious states or against an ambitious aspiring president. The Senate, sir, is so constituted that they are not only to compose one branch of the legislature, but by the 2nd section of the 2nd article, they are to compose a privy council. A privy council for the president. Hence, it will be necessary that they should be, in a great measure, a permanent body, constantly residing at the seat of government. 70 years is estimated for the life of a man. It can hardly be supposed. 70 years? 200 years ago, 70 years was the expected life, and it's 78. We've only increased our life expectancy by 8. God damn. Think we could work on that, don't you think? It can be hardly supposed that a senator, especially from the states remote from the seat of empire, will accept of an appointment which must estrange him for 6 years from his state, without giving up to a great degree his prospects in his own state. If he has a family, he will take his family with him to the place where the government shall be fixed. That will become his home. And there's every reason to expect that his future views and prospects will center in the favors and emoluments either of the general government or of the government of that state where the seat of empire is established. In either case, he is lost to his own state. If he places his future prospects in the favors and emoluments of the general government, he will become the dependent creature of the president. As assistant enables a senator to be appointed to offices, and without the nomination of the president, no appointment can take place. As such, he will favor the wishes of the president and concur in his measures, who, if he has no ambitious views of his own to gratify, may be too favorable to the ambitious views of the large states, who will have an undue share in his original appointment and on whom he will be more dependent afterwards than on the states which are smaller. If the senator places his future prospects in that state where the seat of empire is fixed, from that time he will be in every question wherein its particular interest may be concerned, the representative of that state, and not of his own. And not of his own, and not of his own. Luther Martin's Genuine Information, Baltimore, Maryland Gazette, January 8th, 1788. January 8th, 1788. Could you imagine if he wasn't there? If Luther Martin wasn't there, we wouldn't know what the hell. Oh, and then they got together and they talked about some shit. I don't fucking know what they said. Coming up next, Federalist 62. It'll be February 27th for you. But it's addressed to the people of the state of New York.